Welcome to the Teachers Impact Podcast, or better yet known as The Tip, where teachers can come to master their craft, use their voice, and enhance student learning. On this episode, we'll be talking about forming small groups for differentiated instruction. Out of all the podcast episodes on this podcast, the differentiated instruction made simple is one of my most listened to episodes. So I figured I would dive a little bit more deeper into differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is meeting the needs of various learning levels and styles in your classroom. What does differentiated instruction do? It helps students to meet their growth targets, but also challenge them to learn above grade level content. So as a teacher, you're able to reach all your students in spite of their learning styles, levels, or grade. The first thing you want to do when forming your small groups for differentiated instruction is to assess your students. A lot of different school districts have different tests. You can use diagnostic data, you can use formative assessments, summative assessments. Formative assessments are like exit tickets, and a summative assessment would be a unit test. So you have a diagnostic, you can use a formative, or you can use a summative. So, when you're doing this, when you're assessing your students, I want you to think of your students individually and make observations about how they learn best and what they get excited about. For example, you may notice a student who loves animals, who's really interested in animals, or you may have a student that's a kinesthetic learner. That would then tell you that you need to incorporate kinesthetic learning in that child's small group. Maybe hand movements to help explain a concept. Or if you realize that the child loves learning about animals, you know that you're going to find a text on that child's level that's about animals. So that will really help that child to grow because they're reading something that they're interested in. So again, assessing your students not only through your diagnostic, your summative, and your formative, but really observing them, seeing what their interests are, what gets them excited, and how they learn best. The next thing to do is to group students strategically. So use your diagnostic data, your formative and summative assessments, your observations to form those groups. You can start with your diagnostic data and then form groups based on those students' scoring. Once you form your groups based on your diagnostic data, you can look at your formative assessments, you can look at your summative assessments, and you can look at your observations and see, okay, who can I put into the higher group, who can I put into the remedial group, or who can I put into the medium group, or the group that's in the middle. Okay, they're not exactly high and they're not exactly remedial. So think about students that can be in a higher level group even though their score may not show it. For example, a student had a low score, but he's eager to learn and focus. So he could probably be in a higher level group. Depending on the number of students in your class will determine the group size. The max I suggest is 4 to 6 per group. So again, you're looking at the data, but you're also looking at your observations. You're looking at the students and see which group will really fit them best, which group will really help them to grow. There have been times when I've looked at a student's score and saw that they were in the middle. They weren't remedial or they weren't advanced, but I put them in the high group. And there are times when I've seen students in the remedial group, but you can tell that they have that eagerness, they have that wherewithal, that they want to learn. So I'll put them in a higher group. Or sometimes I'll have that student that they don't have that growth mindset, but they're in the middle. And so I'm going to put them in the lower group, but I know as the teacher, I'm going to work with them on developing that growth mindset in the lower level group so that they're able to build up that confidence. And once they build that confidence, they can move in the group. Okay, the next step after you group your students strategically is to plan targeted instruction. So, one of the things that you can do for this, and I strongly suggest, is to use your curriculum. Granted, your curriculum is standards based, granted, your curriculum is high quality. So, for example, your curriculum focus is reading consonant, vowel, consonant words, then your groups may include one group's focus could be recognizing those vowels and consonants. A second group could be reading those consonant vowel words. The third group could be reading consonant vowel vowel. The third group could be reading C, consonant vowel vowel consonant words. You can use letter cards, magnetic letters, and whiteboards for those kinesthetic and tactical learners saying those sounds orally. So again, you're planning targeted instructions based on the groups that you have formed and based on the data. Okay, the last thing to do is to make sure that you monitor and adjust. So you may have to readjust your groupings based on how students are progressing or if they're not progressing. If they are progressing, obviously you're going to think, okay, do I need to move the child to a higher group? Is that going to challenge them a little bit more and help to push them forward? Or if the child is not growing for whatever reason that may be, maybe there's not that growth mindset. Maybe you just haven't tapped into how that student learns. It could be a bunch of different factors that you may have to move that student down. And once you move that student down, that does not necessarily mean that that student is going to stay there forever. You're just moving them down so that they can get to a place where they feel more confident in the group that they're in. And once they feel more confident, they're better able to learn. And one of the things about the grouping that I want you to take into consideration is that I don't tell my students if they're in the high, medium, or low group. My groups last year, they were actually group A, group B, group C. So it's a very nondescript name and students do not know. And because I don't want to label them in any sort of way, this is why I make my group names group A, group B, group C, so they all understand and they know that everybody is just where they are. Everybody has their different skills and talents. Where you are doesn't determine where you're going to be for the rest of the school year. Okay, and some of the challenges that you might face when forming your small groups, sometimes you just may not have enough materials or resources. I was lucky enough that last year our district purchased the whole new curriculum, so we got everything that we needed. This was like such a time saver for me because I didn't have to go looking for materials. I had everything that I needed, which was so helpful, but I know that's not the case for a lot of teachers in the classroom. Most of the time, you're making your own materials or you're sharing with another teacher. To overcome that challenge, what you can do is to reach out to colleagues if they have any additional resources. I had a fourth grade teacher come down to me this year. I had some extra books that I was not using, and she needed books on a first grade level. And she asked me if she could borrow the books. I said, sure, go right ahead, because I know how it feels not to have enough resources and not have the tools that you need. Okay. The other thing I would suggest is to ask for what you need, because when you get what you need, you're going to be able to get your students what they need to do well. Sometimes you may have coaches or even your principal, if they have open door policies. I always say ask, because they may say yes. If they say no, they say no. But if they say yes, you're gonna get what you need. Okay. The second thing is the professional development, sometimes you may feel that you need more, knowledge in terms of how to work with those groups, how to set those clear objectives for that group. One of the things that I can say is to really utilize your curriculum's teacher's edition. Will tell you everything that you need to know. If you have a child that's not meeting, that's not growing, that's not doing, if you have a child that's above level, if you have a child that's in between, there's sometimes extra resources that you can read in the back of the teacher's edition. It'll tell you why they pick certain strategies over another strategy, how often you should use a strategy. It's a really undervalued resource that sometimes teachers take for granted. So I would really suggest that really take a close look at your teacher edition to really help you when you're planning edition, to see how it can really support you in forming your small groups and in your teaching in general. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that parent communication is also helpful when targeting your instruction. So I had a student who was in the remedial group in one of my classes, and during parent-teacher conference, I explained to the parent that, she's very capable, she's very intelligent, but when it comes to her reading, she's not where she's supposed to be. I was really honest with the parent in the most diplomatic way that I could be, but the parent heard the feedback and he found a way to work with. I sent home extra work, I sent home sight words, I sent home books. The little girl would be asking me for books to take home, and I saw the improvement in her grouping, and I was able to move her from one group to the other. So part of it is making sure that you're communicating with parents at the same time, because that can also help not only when you're forming your small groups, but to help the child to move to another group when you're being flexible with your grouping. So last but not least, we have some key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, take small steps. It is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. I've been doing this for years and I still have things that I can work on. And key takeaway number 2, differentiated instruction addresses diverse student needs and promotes inclusive learning. Number 3, strategic group formation and targeted instruction are important. And number 4, overcoming challenges requires creativity, collaboration, and continuous professional growth. And number 5, a supportive classroom environment and active engagement with parents can enhance your success. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to check out the website, teachersimpact.net. If you found this content helpful, please share, favorite, and rate on your favorite podcast app. It helps the show to grow, reach more teachers, and have an impact. You can email me at teachersimpacteducation@gmail.com or follow me on Instagram at teachersimpactpodcast. Happy learning and growing.